one of the most effective leadership strategies, although I hate to reduce it to a strategy because it's more than that, is to produce an organization predicated on the intrinsic alignment of interests, right? And so what you really want if you set up an organization is you want each person pursuing a goal that they personally value and so are willing to work for and to sacrifice for and to dedicate themselves to. And then you want each of those goals to be serving a superordinate goal that unites and moves the entire team ahead. And then you don't have to use coercion and so forth. And you can imagine if you're doing that, helping each athlete become the best they can be on the personal level for whatever personal gain they might manage in terms of being more resilient and in terms of, achievement, status, and all of those things, comparative status. You're also doing the same thing for the team. And you can see you can understand without much effort how useful that would be in executive management, for example. Like I worked with a number of extraordinarily good managers in the business realm, especially on the legal front, and then also in academia. And the really great managers, they had a very light touch. They tended to go around and remove problems before they started. And so it often looked like they were doing almost nothing. But they were also extremely good at aligning people's interests so that everybody was moving in the same desirable direction. And so what do you think you did badly on that front and had to learn to do better? And what do you think you did well?
I think the things I did well were the things I mentioned. It's especially as a woman, it's difficult to hold each other accountable. Typically, women, they don't like to be assertive in that way. They think it's mean. They take it personal. And so something I always tried to do well was hold people accountable in a way that made them want to do better. And I think that falls along with, again, helping people develop personally to reach those team goals, which again, I don't think even a male can understand necessarily how especially a group of 40 women, that dynamic is hard to navigate. And so holding people accountable, I think it's crucial. And I feel as if I did that relatively well. What I think I could have probably improved on is being a little more understanding. It's hard for me to put myself in someone else's shoes sometimes, to consider what they have going on outside of, the sport, because we truly did put so much of our identity, so much of our self-worth into our sport that I oftentimes would forget to look at anything other than what's going on in the sport. If someone was having a bad practice, it was very quick for me to get snippy at them without remotely and thinking about other factors that could contribute to the bad practice, whether that be sleep, diet, school.
That's a hard psychological dynamic. And you made a sex-specific comment there, too, that we could delve into. Well, if you're focused on a particular goal and you're competitive and achievement-oriented and you want to win, then your focus tends to narrow to that particular domain, right?
Absolutely.
And what that means is that you'll sacrifice other interests and concerns for that particular, what would you say, ability to progress along that particular axis. And as you said, well, that can come across as harsh. Now, on average, women are more agreeable than men. And so that means, on average, they're less harsh, at least overtly. And, it's an open question, and I don't think anybody knows exactly how to answer this question. Then what effective leadership on the female front looks like? Now, you faulted yourself, and I would say you faulted yourself in some sense for taking a more masculine perspective on those sorts of group endeavors, because it's typical among men for a group of men to concentrate on the goal at hand and to say, to hell with all the other concerns, which is something like, don't bring your bloody troubles to work, just do your damn job. Now, you made the point that was perhaps differentially challenging when working with women. Do you think Why do you think that? Why isn't that just a sexist claim, for example? I mean, why do you think that's the case? Where have you run into that, and how would you justify it? And what did you do about it?
Right. Yeah, this is solely based off my experiences. At the University of Kentucky, of course, there's a men's team and a women's team. My husband now, who I've married, he was on the men's team at Kentucky. Just watching their interactions, watching how they can communicate with each other, brush it off, come back to the next practice and be totally fine. That doesn't work with girls. Again, based solely off of my experiences, this isn't to overgeneralize. This is to share exactly what I have seen firsthand. Girls tend to be more moody. They tend to not take constructive criticism as well, whether that be from the coach or from other teammates or from whoever. But the men, on the other hand, especially at the University of Kentucky, which, again, I was able to witness, they could get on each other's backs. They could say personal things to each other that even didn't necessarily apply to their sport when they were getting on one another. As women, there would be catfights if we did that, which, again, sounds silly, but that's truthfully what I experience on a day-to-day basis.
It would be easy to toss all of your discipline to the side for the summer, but a life of greatness doesn't happen by taking the easy route. The Hallow app offers an incredible range of guided meditations and prayers, which are designed to help you deepen your spirituality and strengthen your connection to God. For the third year in a row, Hallowed is having their wildly popular Saints in 7 Days prayer challenge, where over the course of 4 weeks, you'll journey through the life of an incredible saint, learning more about their faith, story, and ultimate surrender to the will of God in their life. The challenge will kick off August 5th with Joe Mazzulla, the coach of the Celtics, and Saint Sebastian, the patron saint of athletes. Then, Rhea Wahlberg will lead meditations on the life of Saint Elizabeth Seton, followed by Jonathan Rumi walking through the powerful story of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, who sacrificed his own life for the life of another at Auschwitz. Closing the series with Father David Michael Moses and Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. Saints in 7 Days goes deep into the lesser-known parts of a saint's life to show that while their journeys to sainthood were filled with God's grace and glory, they also included human struggles, great suffering, mistakes, and a profound need for God's mercy. Download the Hallow app today at hallow.com/Jordan for an exclusive 3-month trial. That's hallow.com/Jordan.
Well, so one of the temperamental differences between men and women is that difference in agreeableness, let's say. And so there's less of a tendency for overt conflict among women. Now, that doesn't mean there's less of a tendency for covert conflict. And actually what you do see is that antisocial women, right, the ones who can't cooperate well and who can't work together in a team, they use underground strategies like reputation savaging and gossip to, what would you say, promulgate their aggressive behavior. Now, men are much more likely to do that up front, and there's some simplicity in that. But also women have a proclivity to experience more negative emotion than men, and so for each unit of stress, they manifest more psychophysiological response. That seems to kick in around puberty, and so that additional, you call it volatility is the technical term. That's an aspect of trait neuroticism, by the way. That volatility also, that increased volatility also makes it more difficult, arguably, for women to brush things off the same way that men who are cooperating in a team might. And I mean, the reason I'm talking about this, by the way, and delving into this is because we are going to get into the topic of sex and gender very soon, because, well, that's where we're headed, given that that's the root of the conflict that's made itself manifest around you. And so it's useful to establish and to start to explore the territory that's relevant with regard to sex differentiation. Now, obviously, when you were competing, you weren't competing in a co-ed situation.
Right.
It was women competing against women and men competing against men, and it's been set up like that for a long time. So, given the claims in our society for radical equality, both in actuality and as a desirable outcome, first of all, do you think that there's what is, if any, the justification for not making all sporting events, let's say, radically co-ed?
Well, because I think we know how this would turn out. time and time again, regardless of the sport, regardless of if it's an individual sport, a team sport, what that might look like. We've seen example after example where a mediocre male or a mediocre men's team, nowhere near ranking the top. Let's say this could be nationally, this could be whatever level you're comparing here. Unanimously, these men's teams, they dominate the women. So having a co-ed team, that would not be beneficial to women by any means. So I think that's why I believe there's value to having co-ed instructional teams when you're younger, when you're learning. But once you've gone through that puberty, it's irreversible. Men are, of course, on average, taller, faster, stronger, more powerful. They jump higher. There's so many different attributes, advantages that men have in comparison to women. And so I think co-ed teams, in a sense, if that's what you're looking for, of course, there's value to it. But at the competitive level where you're competing, again, to win, that's what your goal is. Having men compete against women is very obvious. It's unfair.